KPIs give us represent the overall health of a product or success of a business.
So objectives are something that are focused towards your goals. It should be futuristic and it should be probably encouraging for the team. So let's
If
take
you were to talk about how do you use these at work, right? What would be some examples which you can walk us
Some
through?
of the key metrics that we monitor is adoption, engagement, and customer satisfaction. Because we are new, right? We want people to adopt our products.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our podcast, Everything Product. So, we talk about the latest technologies with a product mindset. I'm Sid Saladi. I work as a product manager for Best Buy.
Hey, I'm Srinath. I work as a product manager at JP Morgan.
Hi everyone, this is Fani Oyeru. I'm a product manager at a startup.
Yeah. So, today we have a very interesting topic. So, product managers, live and breathe by metrics, and we're going to talk about KPIs and OKRs and what are the differences between both of them. So as a new product manager, right, so it's always confusing to understand what these are and why are they used and how can we measure the success of a product. So we'll maybe try to get into some of these details. Take an example. So we are going to take our YouTube channel as a product and see what corresponds to a KPI for our YouTube channel, and also what are the OKRs for our YouTube channel, and we'll get into the details of this. So yeah, let's maybe start with the basics here. So Srinath, uh, tell us about KPIs.
Yeah, KPIs are nothing but key performance indicators which help people to gauge the performance towards the business goals or a product success. So, for example, you can take the number of subscribers, in our case, for our YouTube channel, Everything Product, the number of hours of watch time that people are watching. So, those are some of the examples that I can say.
Yeah, and so these are something which we keep monitoring, right, and see how the overall performance of the channel is, and then maybe change or adapt our OKRs based on where we want to get to and how the performance is being affected. So that brings us to our another definition here, which is OKRs. So Funny, get us started with OKRs.
Yeah, absolutely. Sid. So let's take a step back, right? So what are OKRs? OKRs are nothing but objectives and key results. This concept as such has been in the industry for like quite some time. It's been over 50 years, but it's become popular, I think, when Google started using it in the last 20 years or so, 20, 30 years or so. So now let's think about our Everything Product YouTube channel, right? It's a product, and on a quarterly basis, we want to define some objectives. So let's start with how we define the objectives. So objectives are something that are focused towards your goals. It should be futuristic and it should be probably encouraging for the team. So let's think of our objective for this quarter as we want to be one of the best product management content channels. How would you measure the success for it? So now that goes to the key results. So when we define the key results, like Srinath was mentioning, one of the KPIs that we have is watch time. So what we will do is we'll define the watch time to say, hey, I want to improve my watch time from this to this by end of this quarter. The same way, like let's take subscribers. We want to have a subscriber count from this to this by end of this quarter. So that's how we define OKRs on a quarterly basis.
Yeah, that's right. And also, right, so these sometimes might look similar, but they're different, and each of them complement one another, right? And there are subtle differences, right? So OKRs are more temporary, and you are doing that for a quarter or maybe two half yearly. But KPIs are ongoing, and they keep changing and keep increasing or decreasing over time, and based on that you take actions, right? And the same thing, right? And when priorities change, OKRs change. The same thing, KPIs give us the overall represent the overall health of a product or success of a business, right? And OKRs are aspirational, but KPIs are more values which are defined, which you want to monitor over time. So I think these are the subtle differences between both of them, but both of them work really well together, defining a success of a product. Okay, so let's maybe also get into some more details of when can we use this, right? So what would be the right time to use OKRs, and what would be another right time to use KPIs? So Srinath, I'll go to you for that.
The way I see the difference is KPIs you always design for the long term. For instance, increasing that revenue from X to Y, right? So when you define that long term, how you get there, what are the different steps that you take? That's what I say, define OKRs as, like what Funny mentioned, right? So these are short term, but those are for long term, like maybe an
Mm.
year or 2 years. But OKRs we generally do for quarterly.
Yeah, and maybe if we take the YouTube channel, right, as a product,
Yes.
so our KPIs are subscribers and watch time, right? So these are the KPIs which we keep monitoring every month and every quarter, and maybe for this quarter, our OKRs are to get to a maybe a week over week subscriber increase of 100, and a week over week subscriber increase, sorry, watch time increase of maybe 50 or 100 hours. So that's basically moving the needle forward on what our KPIs are. And do you want to add anything there, Funny?
Yeah, absolutely. So one more thing to think about is in terms of let's take the same thing, right? Our YouTube channel into picture. OKRs will change. For example, I don't know if you guys remember when we started the channel, one of our objectives was to consistently post a video every week. And we are way beyond that right now, and we don't even think about posting every week because we have got to a phase where we are consistently posting now. Now we are also doing shorts every day, and then a primary video every week, etc. Now our objective has changed to say, hey, our content has to be better. So we have different object key results that measures how our content is performing, and then the same way we are also thinking about how we can increase our watch time, subscribers, etc.
Yeah. So these OKRs directly contribute towards increasing of the KPIs, right? So we are saying that the quality, as we increase the quality, there'll be more people watching, and that will in turn contribute towards the overall watch time increase on a week or week, month or quarter or quarter basis.
One thing I want to add there, Sidhu, is so the very first thing that eventually starts all of this is the overall business strategy, right? So if we are going with our vision or the strategy that we have defined for us, we want to be the best product management content channel in YouTube or any other podcast channel. Okay. So now with that as the vision, we started defining our OKRs for every quarter. And then in order for us to go through our OKRs, we have defined our key performance indicators and we continue to track them.
And also, right, like when we use KPIs at work, right, so there are different metrics which you track as KPIs. It's not just one metric which you track, right? For products, there could be a North Star metric, there could be one metric that matters, and there could be, you know, secondary metrics which are follow-up metrics to these primary metrics. And there could also be health metrics and guardrail metrics. So these are all the metrics which you have on a dashboard which you keep monitoring and making sure these are up, or whatever the threshold is, right? And if there is something wrong that's going on, that's where you go in and see what the problem is, or maybe figure out a way to increase those specific indicators and plan or create OKRs to increase that in the next quarters. So maybe if you were to talk about how do you use these at work, right? What would be some examples which you can uh, walk us through?
Maybe I can start. So at work, I mean, I'm a platform product manager, right? So bunch of the things that I develop are focused on reliability. So if we are making any specific calls to the customer, how reliable are we? Like, what is our uptime? So is our uptime 99.99%? Is it 4 nines, 5 nines, etc.? And then we also think about reliability in terms of like, let's say we are making 100 calls, what percentage of time is it successful? And we have different API calls that we make to different partners. So we track the success rate for each of these and tell how reliable they are. And then we also look into support tickets. How many support tickets are we getting on a monthly basis? Or customer satisfaction. So what is our CSAT score? So is it 3? Is it 3.5? What is the industry standard? How do we improve it, etc. So all of these are KPIs that we look at a platform product management level.
Yeah. So maybe
So
one other follow up question to that is, right, let's maybe say support tickets are a KPI which you are tracking, and maybe support tickets are varying between 50 to 100. And if your overall business goal is to reduce the support tickets, and for a quarter maybe you'll have an OKR to say that to get it below 10, and that will be your new KPI standard which you'll be tracking. So is that true?
Yeah, so if it's between 50 to 100, I might not even take that goal. I wish that number was that low.
Okay,
But
okay.
in general, I would tell it the same way. So let's say in the last quarter, if I looked at it on a monthly basis, on an average, let's say I had 2000 tickets, 2000 support tickets to do certain things. I would take an objective for this quarter to say I want to provide best in class customer experience, and which basically means the number of support tickets which I'm getting should be lower. So one of the KRs would basically be reduce the number of support tickets by 15%. And I'll also probably take a stretch goal to say reduce the overall support tickets by 20%. So that way I motivate my team also to say, hey, our goal is this, but let's do a stretch and see what else we can do for the quarter as well.
Yeah. And one other question, there are different tools people use to keep track of all of these metrics, right? Like what do you use at work to keep track of this?
We use spreadsheets primarily, but
Okay.
the way we get this data varies. So, for example, support tickets, we use Zendesk a lot. So, and that Zendesk data would basically come to a Looker, I mean, Google Looker Studio.
Looker
And
Studio.
then we
Yeah,
use,
yeah.
yeah, Looker Studio, and then you track that to see how many support tickets did we get and stuff. But let's say if you're looking at reliability is completely dependent on our own systems, our own calls and stuff, right? So we use different dashboards. Like Superset is one thing that we use, but there are different tools like Tableau or anything like that that you can use to track your metrics.
That's right. Yeah. And I think similarly for some of the KPIs, we use Looker Studio, and maybe reliability we use Grafana.
Mhm.
And it varies by the data sources also. Sometimes sales gives us a lot of information, and sales use NetSuite as a CRM tool, and that gives a lot of information from there. So yeah, it varies. Okay. Srinath, how about you?
yeah, so I'm a data product manager. So what we are trying to do is build new data products. So they are pretty early in the game. Some of the key metrics that we monitor is adoption, engagement, and customer satisfaction. Because we are new, right? We want people to adopt our products, as well as understand how engaged they are, and as well as understand if they are satisfied with the product, whether it's solving their problem or not. So these are some of our North Star metrics that we continue to monitor, and we use different tools. We use spreadsheets for some of the stuff. We also use heap analytics, which is like an external tool, which really helps you to understand the customer journey and engagement, like click through rates, the drop off rates, where customer probably is struggling to find the right thing that they want, such as those, right? So these metrics for me are very important that it track.
Okay. And heap analytics, does that give you heat maps on how much time the customers are spending on different pages and all?
Yes, so it does have some fancy stuff. So we just started adopting it,
Okay.
but we need to play more around it. But yes, there is that functionality.
Okay. Yeah. So I think by now people would be understanding what KPIs are, OKRs are, what are the subtle differences between them, and how they complement each other. So I think there are also, we can talk about different tips on how to pick what the right KPIs are and keep monitoring them, right? So maybe let's go through and talk about the different tips which will give any aspiring product manager or product manager to choose the right KPIs. So I'll start with you, Funny. So can you maybe give you like what is the topmost thing which you look at before you even pick KPIs for your product?
Yeah, absolutely. So the very first thing I would say is always align towards your business goals, because your company always has a strategic vision to say, let's say in financial year 24, I want to get from here to here. Always make sure to align your OKRs and KPIs towards that business goal. And another thing to keep in mind is always the customer, right? Customer is the king. So if you're tracking anything that's related to the customer, then you're doing good to the product. If you're doing good to the product, you will be able to achieve all of your goals, which corresponds to your business at the end of the day. So that's my first step. Like, always make sure it's aligned towards the business and the customer.
Yeah. And I think maybe an example for that is right. If, at Best Buy, there are top three goals, which I think are at a highest level, which trickle down to different departments, and these are revenue and customer connections and so on and so forth. So all the teams try to calibrate whatever their OKRs are according to these top three things for the next 3 years, which Best Buy is focusing on.
I want to add one more thing there, right? So Intuit has a very similar thing. So we have something called big bets. So there are 5 big bets defined for the next 5 years. So these things wouldn't change at a company level. So every team, whatever they're doing throughout that quarter or throughout that year, at the end of the day, they align towards what big bet that they are trying to achieve. And that helps not just my leadership, my platform leadership, or the product leadership. It helps the overall company to understand how much investment we are putting into each of those big bets and the
Yep.
eventual results and stuff.
Yeah, and maybe another example would be Meta's vision, right, which is bringing people closer together and enriching communities. So that has been their goal for years, and every team thinks through that lens in creating any product or feature under Meta.
I would love to understand how the
Yeah.
metaverse is playing in that overall strategy.
Man, that's like you are. I think maybe they're as you talk to people, you know through rather than video, right, in 3D, you are maybe having more closer interactions, and that's bringing people closer together. That's an assumption, but
So the overall Uber point, probably for all viewers around this, is make sure when you are defining those KPIs, those are try to keep business or user goals. I mean, don't just define metrics for the sake of metric, which don't add value, right?
yeah, makes sense. Okay, so Srinath, what would be your second tip?
So my second tip would be, I mean, avoiding vanity and appeasement metrics. Vanity metrics are something like which may look good on paper but may not add much value, right? So let's take an example for everything product. So if you take everything product, we have so few vanity metrics which we don't care about, but we want to see on paper, right? Like the number of videos uploaded. I think till date we probably uploaded like 60 or 65 or something, which I mean, which is good just on paper, but it doesn't add much value. Similarly, the number of comments that we get for our videos and number of views that we get. What we care more about is the things that Funny mentioned, right? The number of hours of watch time, the number of subscribers. I mean, watch time is always the North Star, but those metrics really tell us the story whether people are really liking our content or not. Versus the vanity metrics, which I talked about, which don't add much value and which are not actionable, right? I can't take anything out of it. So that's what that's basically that's very important to keep in mind. So when you're defining KPIs.
That's right. And I think this is I think the gist of it is measure something which tells you or gives you an indication of the point of value to the user, right? So maybe if you're same thing as the example of our podcast, right? There's maybe let's take another example of somebody who's creating courses, right? Maybe LinkedIn Learning. So the number of courses on LinkedIn Learning is a vanity metric, but the number of people who are maybe completing a course is a metric which tells what value people are getting from that product.
Yep.
Yeah.
It
So
should always be actionable.
okay. Yeah. So funny. What would be another tip which you would give?
Another thing I would think of is probably like quantitative and qualitative. A lot of people get stuck to numbers because that's something that you can easily see and easily measure. So a lot of people look at their quantitative metrics a lot and then continue to build products on top of it. Another thing always to keep in mind, customer, right? So customer might be doing certain things, but they might be struggling to achieve a certain thing. So have a definite look at your qualitative feedback as well. Go look at people's comments. Like if you're doing surveys and stuff, see how people are thinking about your product. Or if you're doing polls and all, understand what the customer wants to get from you. That can teach you a lot on how to grow your product. So that's the other tip that I would probably give. Like have a closer look at both at your quantitative and qualitative metrics or
Yeah,
indicators.
and also another example for that would be, right, so sometimes when you're looking at numbers, right, everything might be really really good, but when you look at some of the qualitative stuff where maybe people let's say that you're selling a product on Amazon, right, sales are increasing, number of people watching your page is increasing, everything is increasing, but people are frustrated with the usage of the product, or maybe they're frustrated with a certain feature of a product which you see in comments, right, so that gives you an analysis of how people are feeling while using the product. So even though all of these numbers are increasing, maybe there's an opportunity for you to, if you are maybe correcting that'll increase that numbers even further, right, so this will help you look the take a 360 view and look at all of these to improve your success of the product.
Let me just add this. It might help you reduce the churn as well,
Yeah.
Sidhu, because if the
Yep.
qualitative feedback is bad, like as people
Yep.
read the comments, they might reduce ordering the same product. So the
That's right.
faster
Yeah.
you catch your qualitative feedback and act on it, the better it is for your product. Got you.
So one thing which I often saw is, I mean, taking the qualitative, especially the quality. I think quantitative, it's probably straightforward from the numbers, but qualitative, taking actions based on that is pretty challenging. I mean, I was just curious, what are kind of the different tools that you guys use to understand that? I know there are some text mining, sentiment analysis, but I was just curious.
Yeah, so I think different ways, right, so normally I do surveys, interviews, right, these are some tools which can help you, and also sometimes there are a lot of support channels where people talk to or come to with questions, right, this also will help you understand what the sentiment of the product is and how people are feeling. Sometimes when people are really really happy over the product, there's like a positive tone, but when people are irritated or not satisfied with the product, there's a very complete negative tone to that. So I think all of these would help us understand how people are perceiving the product.
Got it.
On For me, like customer feedback directly in the interviews helps a lot. We also do a CSAT survey. In that, we get a lot of comments. Typically, people say that hey, this is bad, that is bad. Um, we don't do any kind of specific analysis right now, but on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, we spend time and look through those comments to understand what exactly is going on for the customer.
So what is the CSAT
Yeah,
service?
It's just
got funny.
customer satisfaction, like how
Okay,
you feel
okay.
about using the product. And then we just have a comment box there, and then typically we see comments for people who are very frustrated and give like 1 or 2 stars for the feature that we rolled out or the product that we rolled out, but that gives a very good indication of what exactly is happening.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so we used extensively CSAT service when I was in Amazon. One thing which I often struggled was like at Amazon, right? The number of feedbacks, the number of customers they have, the amount of feedback that you get is massive. So in order to do that, we use a lot of sentiment analysis tools, text mining tools. I mean, what it was helping was it was definitely giving us a direction, but not sometimes like exactly, because these text mining tools, sentiment analysis tools are based on interpretation, right? Like sometimes they're not looking at exact context, but just looking at some word and just interpreting and summarizing it. So there is always some kind of error, but it really helped us to give the direction that we are going.
Yeah. And sometimes I find that it's also helpful when you sub-segment this persona, because when you dig more deeper, right, specific personas have a lot of problem compared to the other personas or subsegments of the persona. So that'll give you additional data of like why only this subsegment is uh, having a problem with the product rather than the other one. So that'll maybe uncover a need which these people are not satisfied with. Okay, yeah, and while selecting KPIs, right? KPIs could be lagging and leading indicators. So, Srinath, can you help us understand what lagging and leading indicators are, and how can you how can that help you pick the better ones?
So leading indicators are nothing but you are calculating the outcome based on the past actions. So let's take an example for our from everything product, right? Like whatever we spoke, the subscribers, the watch time, all are lagging indicators, which are really helping us to understand what we need to which is really helping us to understand the outcome based on the number of hours that we got, versus leading indicators are really helping us to predict the future, whether our product will create a desired value or not, right? So it'll, if you take everything product example, like the market share and capturing new countries, capturing new ages who are watching our content, those are some of the things that I can think of from leading perspective. So that's what my takeaway is.
Yeah. Um, and I think that these are all really, really good tips for anybody who is like trying to figure out what KPIs are for important for their product, right? But to sum all of these things together, it's not set and done once you come up with the KPIs, right? So you have to keep calibrating these KPIs and changing these KPIs based on the business goals, change of business goals, business needs, user preferences, and the direction of the product, right? So I think that's very important, and a lot of people kind of don't diligently do that, where sometimes I see people coming up with some KPIs and sticking on them for more than a year, and keep just looking at those metrics rather than trying to see if is this still giving us the value which we want to, and is this still taking us to the direction we want to, and is this still the success which we are defining for the product is. So I think uh, monitoring them on a timely manner will help you better gauge the success of a product.
And we have
Okay.
our own example, right? The
uh,
number of videos that we spoke, right?
yeah, that's right. So
If we
and
thought,
yeah, so go ahead, Srinath.
no, if we thought we'll just stick to number of videos forever, then, and if we would have not reviewed that in a timely manner to focus more on the watch time and all that stuff, then we would have been in a different place, I feel.
Yeah, and as Funny was saying, right, previously it was more about showing up. Now it is more about showing up, and also showing up with the quality content rather than just like talking something, right? Yeah, that's right. Okay, so we went into all of these details and trying to unpack some of these differences, definitions, and all of that stuff, right? But for anybody like who is starting off, managing a product or being a product manager, what would be like the two takeaways which you would give for them? I'll start with you, Srinath.
The two takeaways from me is so always make sure they are business and customer focused. And the second one, make sure you have a both qualitative and quantitative metrics. So you are looking at both lens.
Okay. How about you, Funny?
One thing I would say is like spend time on it. It's not easy to define your OKRs. Uh, Spend time on it, and throughout the quarter, spend time on it. The reason is if you try to spend time on your OKRs at the end of the quarter, you might have limited time and you might have to rush through things to get it done. And in order for you to define the goals and stuff as well, it's not easy. Like if you're doing it throughout the quarter, you can easily define your KRs and come up with the plans that you have. Always try to relate to your business goals. Sometimes we try to define objectives based on the work that is happening or the work that is requested, but make sure to relate to your business goals that will eventually help grow your product and the company. What are
Yeah.
your two takeaways?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is, right, like I think always the metrics which you measure should indicate the point of value to the customers, right? So that's how you look at any metric which you want to track for the success of the product, and that in combination with what the business wants, right? So you can still give a lot of value to the user, but you cannot run out of money, so you have to keep generating revenue. So I think it's a combination of customer and business goals which you have to keep in mind. So that's primary. The second one is, I've not seen people do it right for the first time. So it takes time, right? So OKRs or KPIs, right? The first time you struggle with it, maybe you get 20% of them right. Then the next time you become more better. The second or third time is when you're actually defining what the OKRs are, KPIs are, and then trying to drive the change or move the needle towards where you want to get. So that's it's a process. It's a learning process, I would say. So don't be depressed if you don't get it right the first time. So keep doing it. The more repetitions you do it, the better you get it.
We'll never get it right the first time, Sandeep, for sure.
Yeah. I've been in the trap, and I know how many times I failed by defining something completely different and detached from my product.
And it's
And
also
one thing which I
experimental,
always
right?
learned, yeah, I think one thing which I always learned is our product continues to mature, right? So as the stage changes, our product get matured and matured, we'll have to redefine that. So it's, I feel, a continuous and never-ending process.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.